7 books into a series, is the main character really going to get killed off? Let's find out in Sweet Valley High, number 7, Dear Sister. Hi everyone, I'm Rosie Blythe. I'm the author of the Princess Guide to Life book series, and on this channel we talk about everything from royals to finances to spirituality, and today we're continuing the little mini-series on Sweet Valley High. Every book that I have. We're quite early on in the series so far, but we are at a shocking moment in Sweet Valley High history because it looks like Jessica is going to have to go on without Elizabeth. I mean, she's not, but let's play along with it. This has got to be one of the all-time iconic covers. Tell me why Elizabeth looks like every dead wife of an alcoholic cop in a crime drama. Like, who has a black and white portrait of their 16-year-old looking like this? It's just so funny to me. And yes, thank you for noticing I am wearing the same pink vest top that Jessica is wearing in this, because I had a pink vest top and it's like I can't resist dressing like them if I can. So if you were choosing which Sweet Valley High book to add to your collection next, you were browsing the bookshop, you could be forgiven for thinking Elizabeth is doomed, because the cover, I mean, even the fact that she is in black and white sort of suggests that she's already in the past, doesn't it? And then you've got the tagline, "Can Jessica face life without Elizabeth?" Because what if she has to? And then the blurb is all about, will she ever wake up? And even, they always used to have a little excerpt on the first page so that you could kind of get a taste for what the book was like. Even that takes place where Elizabeth is still in a coma. However, of this 150-page book, she actually comes out of the coma on page 12. So that is not the whole premise of the book, thank goodness. So if you haven't read book number 6, you might want to do that, or check out the recap that I made. But the basic premise is Elizabeth rode on the back of Todd's motorbike, even though she had been forbidden from doing so. Instantly, you know, had a crash into a coma, because that's what happens in Sweet Valley when you disobey your parents or do anything naughty, unless you're Jessica. So although Todd was obviously in everyone's bad books, he's sort of been forgiven because it was Elizabeth's idea to get on the bike. So he and Jessica are just united in wanting Elizabeth to wake up and be back to full health. I think the Wakefield worship has got to be in the opening scene when Elizabeth is in a coma. Elizabeth hardly resembled the vivacious girl she'd been just a few days earlier, and Jessica's fresh youthful beauty was still very much in evidence, so it's okay, don't worry, but it was marred by worried expression. So these poor girls, even at their worst moments, it's like, yeah, but how do they look? Are they looking good? And how's the tan? So like every classic coma scene, Jessica is just talking to Elizabeth, hoping that something in, you know, holding on to her voice will sort of trigger her waking up. And it's interesting because Jessica almost has this sort of crisis of conscience where she's like, it was kind of my fault that Elizabeth was in this accident because I was supposed to be giving her a lift, and that's why she got on Todd's bike, essentially, because I wasn't there. And also, I've been a terrible sister to her all these years. So she's sort of talking out loud about this. And she says, if you'll just wake up, I'll do anything you want me to. I'll be your slave for life. And it's interesting because this is what actually triggers Elizabeth waking up. So it's almost like that was enough, and we're going to find out why. But as soon as Elizabeth is awake, there seems to be this strange change in her. She's suddenly not wanting to see Todd, who she's normally absolutely devoted to. And she's like, oh, I want to look better for the cute doctors in here. And Jessica's like, okay, this is weird, because that's almost like something I would say. So Jessica finds herself kind of making excuses to Elizabeth, like, oh, she's exhausted, that's why she doesn't want to talk to you, Todd. And then she's flirting with the doctors. So we know there's been a pretty fundamental change in Elizabeth. And it's decided that the twins will be allowed to throw a party to celebrate Elizabeth coming out of her coma. And Elizabeth suggests that they just have a party with all boys. And Jessica kind of has to be the voice of reason and says, well, we, you know, much as I'd love to do that, we can't because boys don't throw parties. So we've got to make sure that girls invite us back to theirs. So it's not even like an unselfish reason. Elizabeth goes back to school and she's wearing a green mini dress. And when Jessica looks at her own outfit, the jeans and shirt had looked great 5 minutes ago. Now they looked dull and uninteresting. And it's weird because they've kind of swapped outfits. Like, when does Jessica ever go to school in jeans and shirt? Like, that's an Elizabeth outfit. So inevitably they get mixed up all day, which isn't particularly flattering to Jessica, weirdly. So we have a bit of not Wakefield worship, but Sweet Valley High worship here. So it says Jessica spent Saturday afternoon at the beach playing volleyball with the kids, working on her tan and feeling sorry for everyone who didn't live in Southern California. Okay. These books, they're almost like sort of tourist guides where they make you feel like, oh, I've got to go to that place, otherwise my life won't be complete. So their parents give them permission to have a party by themselves because they're going out, which seems kind of insane to me, but okay. Two 16-year-olds opening up the house to all their friends. What could possibly go wrong? So Elizabeth has gone out without telling Jessica, so Jessica has to start doing all the work, putting out all the food, cleaning the pool, all that kind of stuff. And when she's just about finished and she wants to get dressed, she finds Elizabeth has got home and jumped in the shower. How annoying. Now I'm pretty sure that's not the only shower in their house though, because it always talks about the twins' bathroom that's between their two bedrooms. So I know that their parents must have a separate one. Anyway, but Jessica becomes aware that this is what she normally does, and Elizabeth just does all the work and Jessica normally just sails in like, oh great, thanks. So the tables have well and truly been turned. So Jessica's in her ice blue bikini, which I'm pretty sure we have mentioned before. I know she's had an ice blue swimsuit of some kind. And Elizabeth looking simply sensational in a brand new, very revealing green bikini. It sure wasn't Elizabeth's usual style. So it says the party is a success, largely because of Elizabeth's radiant performance. She picked out the music, insisted on dancing with every boy, and kept up a non-stop chatter that the guys found fascinating. I'm sure they did. The only boy she's not talking to is her alleged boyfriend, Todd. So Todd and Jessica sort of become allies in a way because they're the only two who are like, this is weird, what's going on? They get both kind of accuse each other of being jealous. So Todd is jealous because Elizabeth's not paying any attention to him. Jessica is jealous because Elizabeth has taken her usual place in the spotlight. So she's basically out-Jessica-ing Jessica. And other people are noticing, they're like, wow, she's lively tonight. But Jessica is obviously like, no, she's fine, she's normal. At least for once, Jessica is defending Elizabeth in the same way that Liz normally does for her. Things do seem to be deteriorating. Jessica says everyone knew Elizabeth was in trouble at school, everyone except her parents, that is. So that's very unlike Elizabeth. She's normally top of the class, you know, all the extracurricular activities, teacher's pet basically. So it's weird that no one is really showing any concern about this. So anyway, the Wakefields announce that they're going to have some house guests, woo! And it's the children of their friends who are going to be in Europe for a few weeks. That's a long time to babysit, isn't it? So it's these two 12-year-old girls, twins. And Elizabeth very uncharacteristically says, a broken leg would be more fun than babysitting those two little twerps. and Jessica has to be the one going, oh no, you know, we'll have fun, won't we, Liz? Come on. So the parents see this change, but are just like, oh, that's Elizabeth's being strange tonight. They don't seem to really engage with the fact that she's been a different person since she came out of the coma. They're really bad parents. As soon as these twins arrive, the Wakefields go out for a game of bridge, just leaving these two little girls in a strange house with their teenagers. So they're not even good hosts, are they, really? Jessica is planning to go on a date with Danny, the guy that she was dating in the last book. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is getting ready to go out in a new miniskirt, even shorter than the green one that hung in her closet. Ooh, and we don't know how long that is, so that's actually meaningless. So Elizabeth discovers that her parents have gone out, and she knows Jessica is planning to go out, but she doesn't tell Jessica that, she just goes out without her. So in ignorant bliss, Jessica is getting ready for her date. She checked the way her black pants and red blouse showed off her slender figure. Good thing you lost those 2 pounds, Jess, she told herself. Dan wouldn't want to put his arms around a blimpo. She's a size 6 and 2 pounds was going to make her a blimpo. I cannot fathom what mindset you would have to put that in. Like, she could just be making any comment about herself when she's getting ready, like, oh, good thing I use that new moisturiser, it makes my skin look really soft, or anything. Like, you don't have to always be like, oh yeah, an extra 2 pounds on a size 6 person would make them a blimpo. Just like, why? Why? Anyway, Jessica discovers that she is alone in the house with these two 12-year-olds. And I think it's actually quite decent of Jessica that she doesn't just go out and leave them, because they're 12. It's the 80s. I mean, 12-year-olds were babysitting in the 80s, weren't they? But she's like, no, I can't leave them alone. Danny arrives, and it says, at that moment, Jessica didn't care if the whole world was sitting in the living room with the Percy twins. Danny Stoffer knew how to kiss a girl better than any boy Jessica had ever dated. She says to him, okay, there's been a change of plan. And he's like, what? She suggests that they just take these two little girls to the drive-in with them. He says, no way, Jess, I told you what I had planned for tonight. There's no way I want an audience. Which is reasonable. 16-year-old boy on a date, I think that's okay. I think this is the most Jessica moment when Danny's like, how are you going to make it up to me? Jessica knew she was getting in deeper than she wanted to, but she couldn't seem to stop herself. Any way you want, she finally said. And he says, okay, let's go munchkins. You don't look much like Lucky Charms, but that's what you're turning out to be. So yeah, we've got a whole arrangement beginning to happen. Anyway, Jessica has basically a dreadful night with these two girls on her date, and her parents, being really clueless, they're just like, oh, that's so sweet, you took those girls out. And she's like, it was the worst night of my life. But when she starts to explain it, she realises that she's going to be kind of dropping Elizabeth in it if she says like, oh, the reason I had to take them was because Elizabeth went out and left them, even though she knew I was planning on going on a date. So she stops short. She's like, no, I don't want to do that to Liz. So her parents are just completely oblivious to what's going on. And they just think it's really cool because Jessica's like, oh, I've learnt now responsibility can get in the way of having a good time. And they're just like, oh, we're so proud of you. Because they're just clueless. You know what, maybe they should take some responsibility. Like maybe don't take on 2 children that you're going to babysit and then just immediately go out and leave them with your teenagers. Anyway, so they're just really proud of her. And you know, to be fair, I think she is sort of growing up and taking more responsibility for things that normally she would just drop and Liz would pick up the pieces. So, you know, she is learning. But this is the first book where we actually see a better side to Jessica, because normally she is just being a complete cow, just going around doing horrible things to people. And I think this is the first time, A, she's taking on the protective role over Elizabeth, and B, she's actually showing that she's got a bit of grit and backbone. She's actually like a person of character. She's not just like this silly, manipulative, horrible girl. It would be really funny if the whole thing was just a prank. Like if Elizabeth was just like, you know what, I'm going to get a bit of my own back now. All the times Jessica's left me to sort out her messes, I'm going to get a little bit of my own back. Like that would be hilarious, but that's not what's going on. So Mrs. Wakefield says to Jess, I wanted to talk to you about Elizabeth. And she's like, oh, thank goodness. I've been wanting to talk to you too. And it says, Alice Wakefield held up her hand. Before you say a word, honey. Now that's just not a good idea, is it? If your child wants to talk to you, don't stop them and talk over them. That would be my tip for the day. Alice Wakefield is just like, oh, we know we've been paying a lot of attention to her, but we love you just as much. And Jessica's just like, they have no idea what's going on. And it really is quite crappy of them, because they must notice that Elizabeth has changed personality, and it's just like they're not wanting to face it, so they just leave their daughter to deal with it. And it's not really clear like what Elizabeth's social scene is, because she's dropped Enid, she's not talking to her. But anyway, so she is flirting with Ken Matthews, and it says he's recently started dating a pretty redhead called Susan Stewart. So Elizabeth is asking him if he's going to go to the basketball game on Friday, and he says yes, because everyone knows he never misses a sports event. And she's like, wish I were going. And then she goes on to explain, nobody's asked me. Do you actually need a date to go to a basketball game at a school? This seems to be the culture in Sweet Valley High, and I don't know if that's actually reflective of school culture in the US in the 80s, or is that just like a sort of Sweet Valley High invention? So Elizabeth is falling behind in school because obviously she missed work while she was in a coma, not her fault, but now she's not making up the work that she's missed, and which normally she would love getting stuck into a big pile of work. That's Elizabeth's jam. But she targets her friend Winston because he apparently wrote a really great paper that got great marks, and so she's like, maybe I could just borrow it, change it around a little bit, which is so unlike her. It is like Jessica. So she really is just taking on all of Jessica's worst qualities and sort of forcing Jessica to be more Elizabeth. And then she takes another page out of Jessica's playbook when she uses the gossip column that she writes for the school newspaper to insert a little bit about Susan Stewart seeing some mystery man so that she and Ken will break up. When Mr. Collins finds out about this, he fires her from the school newspaper. So Todd Wilkins is normally the star of the basketball team, but he's playing really badly because he's so worried about Elizabeth. And the coach kind of questions what this is all about, and he takes him aside and he says, look, I know that something's wrong because you're acting out of character at being crap at basketball today. So if she's acting out of character, that means something is wrong. And Todd is like, yes, thank you. Because he's been just sort of like trundling along like, oh yeah, this is just what she's like now. And he's like, no, there's something wrong. Something has changed. Anyway, the Wakefields find out that Elizabeth cheated by literally just handing in Winston's term paper as her own. I mean, come on, Elizabeth, cheat better than that. And then they blame Jessica, like, you must have known about this. They are terrible parents. I really don't like them at all. So Jessica goes to Mr. Collins for advice, just as Elizabeth has done so many times before. And he's basically the only adult who is really taking an interest in this. Like the other school teachers are just like, oh, you did this bad thing, so you're going to get punished. They're not questioning why their star student has suddenly had a complete personality transplant. Anyway, we have some nice bonding between Jessica and Todd, because obviously they didn't get off to the best start, because Jessica tried to manipulate Todd into dating her and not Elizabeth, when Elizabeth was the one he really liked, and, you know, told lies about him and stuff. So they've never really got on, but now they've got this common ground that they both just really care about Liz. And it is quite funny, because she's just like, she's complaining about all these guys coming up to her asking for advice about how to ask out Elizabeth. And she's like, they treat me like a buddy. Me, Jessica Wakefield, a buddy. Elizabeth is going full on rebel, because she's now riding around on the back of a motorcycle. Max Dellen, who is the lead guitarist of the Droids, the rock group that always gets a mention. Jessica and Todd try to stop her, they can't. So Todd literally drives after them, and when they're stuck in traffic, he bodily removes Elizabeth from the back of the bike. I guess Max just drives on, I don't know, and puts her in his car. Which, like, I think we're meant to kind of swoon over a little bit. It's all a bit Edward Cullen, isn't it? But, I mean, he has literally kidnapped her from the bike that she was riding, you know, with her full consent. So I don't think it would stand up in court. There is another funny bit where Todd and Jessica have sort of, you know, united to stop Elizabeth doing these dangerous things. And he's like, you know, maybe you and I could become, and she says, if you dare ask me to be your buddy, Todd Wilkins, I'll slug you, I really will. So Jessica is actually quite likeable in this book, I find. The Wakefields continue their quest to become the worst parents in Sweet Valley, because they both have places they need to be on Saturday morning, but Jean and Joan, the Percy twins, need to be driven to their flute auditions. And so they're like, oh, well, Jessica will do it. They don't ask her or even tell her. They leave a note. So Saturday morning, the time when most teenagers would be thinking, oh, nice lie-in, and then what should I do? She finds that she has been tasked with driving kids to a music audition, which is not fun. And we do get a little insight into what Jessica would be like as a mum. She's sort of like likeably brisk. She's like, come on then, let's go, let's do this thing. So she gets mistaken for their older sister, and she's like, she decides that the woman must need glasses if she saw any resemblance between these two brown wrens and a dazzling blonde like herself. So she's even comparing herself to children. She's in such a rush to get to the beach to try and find Danny, because she's stood him up. She gets caught speeding, she gets a ticket, and then, after going to the beach and seeing him with another girl, she then crashes the car. So her life has just become a complete disaster. Anyway, better times are on the horizon, because Lila Fowler is having a party. And when I was reading these books when I was a teen, I just sort of accepted it. I was like, yeah, rich girl, whatever. When I'm reading them now, I'm like, that would be so much fun if you were friends with someone who had a huge mansion and loved throwing parties. I feel like people don't throw as many parties in their homes these days. Is that like not a thing anymore? But anyway, it says, when the Fowlers threw open their sprawling estate on the hill, they went all out. There were lights around the Spanish courtyard, and the hottest band in Southern California played by the swimming pool. And so this is a pick-up party, so everyone goes single and then just like go with whoever they want. And it says, a lot of girls at Sweet Valley who thought they were going steady found themselves without boyfriends after one of Lila's pick-up bashes. And a lot of girls who wanted to get rid of guys did so that same night. Jessica liked the idea because it would give her a chance at just about every neat guy there. I mean, surely the people who are in couples aren't just going to go, oh well, all bets are off tonight. Jessica thinks she has a chance with everyone all the time anyway, doesn't she? Their mum agrees that the twins can go to this party, but she says, all right, but Jessica, you take care of your sister. Now that begs the question, if she thinks Elizabeth is fine and normal and going to school and she's completely back to health, why does Jessica have to look after her? So Alice Wakefield knows there is something wrong with her daughter, and she's just not facing up to it, and she's just like leaving her other daughter to pick up the pieces. That's really crap, isn't it? It says the beautiful twins were both dressed as matadors but with different coloured accessories. Elizabeth's were red and Jessica's were green. But everyone knows who is who straight away, because Elizabeth is the one who's flirting with everyone. And Elizabeth finds herself dancing with Bruce Patman. So it says, tall, dark-haired Bruce was easily the best-looking guy at Sweet Valley High. Oh, I thought that was Todd. And the richest. He was well aware that with his looks, his father's money, and his fantastic talent on the tennis courts, he could date any girl in town except either of the Wakefield twins. Some time back he'd done a real number on Jessica, and he figured that pretty much finished him with either Wakefield. So if you haven't read the book Sweet Valley High #3, you might want to check out the recap, Playing with Fire. And he thinks it's Jessica flirting with him, like, oh, maybe she's come back to me. And then realises it's Elizabeth. And then he's like, oh yeah, I remember hearing that she's being strange lately. Bruce suggests that they go to his father's club. Bruce can't believe his luck. She really was his for the taking. Nice, Bruce. Bruce is awful, if you hadn't noticed. Jessica sees them kind of going off together and she's like, oh no, this can't happen. Which is funny because that's like pretty much what happened when she was dating Bruce and Elizabeth was worried about her. So she sends Todd after them. So Todd opens the car door, pulls Bruce out and punches him. That does seem heroic. You can't just punch people because they're doing something you don't like. Elizabeth willingly went with him, willingly drank the booze. The fact that he has nefarious intentions is sort of, you know, what are you going to do? You can't just punch people for things they haven't done yet. Anyway, Jessica gets in trouble because she didn't tell her parents about the speeding ticket, and she's thinking, well, yeah, because if I told you that, you wouldn't have let me go to the party, and then Elizabeth would have gone home with Bruce. Although it did say earlier that they both had begged to let Elizabeth go to this party because she was actually grounded for her bad schoolwork, so she could have just saved herself hassle by saying, oh yeah, no, Elizabeth shouldn't go. That would have been easier. Anyway. So meanwhile, we meet Bill Chase, who has been mentioned, and he's friends with Todd. So he knows that Todd and Elizabeth aren't going out together anymore. But he asks Todd, like, would you mind if I asked her out? He says, like, I was wondering if you'd get mad at me if I asked Liz out. And it says the expression on Todd's face wasn't anger, it was worry and sorrow. It isn't up to me who she goes out with, he murmured. And Bill's like, okay, great. Which is, like, that's not a very good friend, is it? Like, if your friend got dumped and they were really unhappy about it, I don't think you should pursue the person who dumped them, if you're a good friend. So anyway, Bill turns up to take Elizabeth out. And Jessica is like, oh, hold on. And she thinks that she's gone to Enid's because that was the story Elizabeth told her. But then she finds out she's not there, so she kind of thinks on her feet and is like, I might as well have a night out with Bill Chase. So she goes as Elizabeth, wearing Elizabeth's flowered peasant skirt and a ruffled blouse. Meanwhile, Elizabeth is on a date with Bruce Patman, and he has taken her to the Patmans' luxurious beach house. And they're all alone. And he suggests they go for a swim, and she says she hasn't got a swimsuit, and so he says the classic line, who needs a suit? So they're kissing, but the second she shows any hesitation, he says, hey, what's the matter? I thought you liked me. You certainly liked me the other night. Bruce's handsome face was flushed with anger. Girls did not usually play hard to get with him. I mean, if a guy gets angry with you for not doing everything he wants at that particular moment, that's a big red flag. He says, I won't rush you, but don't keep me waiting too long. Define too long, Bruce. And then we have, I think, the most overt reference to sex that we ever get in this Sweet Valley High book. They're kissing and he says, you like this, don't you, Liz? He let one hand slide lightly onto her breast, waiting to see if she would protest. That feels so good, Bruce, Elizabeth sighed. So, yeah. She couldn't see his triumphant smile and didn't know he planned to gloat about his victory over the girl who'd always snubbed him. And it says, never had a conquest seemed so important to him. So to me, this strongly suggests that Bruce does sleep with girls. And there's going to be more in that in a minute. So there's a bit of background with Jessica. She had been interested in Bill. One time she'd even gone so far as to ask him to a Sadie Hawkins Day party. I had to Google this. Apparently this is something that girls are allowed to ask out boys. He turned her down, so she has been waiting for an opportunity to get even with him. So while they're on their little date, she's basically wanting him to fall in love with her so that she can be like, haha, I'm Jessica. So meanwhile, Elizabeth is lying in the bed waiting for Bruce to bring the wine upstairs. Because obviously this is what he needs to get her to comply with his wishes. And then she gets out of bed and trips over and hits her head. And luckily it's one of those magical movie kind of injuries that just brings her back to herself. So she's completely back to normal. She's Elizabeth Wakefield again, and we never know really what happened to make her turn into Jessica 2.0. So she has no idea where she is or who she's with, and so she's shocked and disgusted to find that she's with Bruce. Says he lounged arrogantly in the doorway, a bottle of wine in one hand, 2 glasses in the other. When she says, how did I get here? Bruce leered at her. You got lucky, Liz. I mean, he is hilarious. One of those guys who's so awful that you just end up laughing. When she's like, I want to go home, I don't know what I'm doing here, he's like, oh, you little tease. Don't give me this little Miss Innocent routine. And then he grabs her. I've got real strong hands, and you give me what I want or I'll tell this whole thing all over school. You want that? What would all your friends think of you then? And she bites him. Good for her. And she says, I never really knew what a coward you were until now. Is that what all your big love stories are about, Patman? Taking advantage of girls who either don't know what they're doing or who are too drunk to care? I don't know anybody lower than you are at this minute. And if you want to tell this story over, go ahead, because I've got one to tell too, and you won't look very good in it. I think that's a really important point. Like when boys are like, oh, I'm going to tell everyone that you did this, it's like, well, you did it too. But I do think it's interesting that it seems pretty clear to me that he does sleep with girls, which is interesting because the books are very sexless. They all just go on dates and kiss and that's it. So yeah, but apparently Bruce is doing stuff. If she didn't remember going anywhere with Bruce, like, does she remember the last few weeks, or is it just all like a complete black hole in her mind? We never find out. Anyway, so she runs out of the beach house onto the beach, and as luck would have it, guess who you think is walking there? Guess. Just guess. It's Todd. Of course it's Todd. And he's already seen Jessica and Bill, who he obviously thought was Elizabeth because she was dressed like her. So he was all jealous about that. But now he and Elizabeth are reunited, and most Elizabeth moment. As soon as she's back to normal, she starts worrying about Jessica because Todd says, oh yeah, I saw you. I thought it was you with Bill, and obviously it's Jessica. And she's like, bad news. I'm afraid it's Jess who's up to no good. And explains that Jessica's been trying to get even with Bill. So out of a coma, out of this traumatic, psychotic episode that she was having, instantly back to old worry Walt Wakefield. So that is Sweet Valley High #7. I think this is my favourite book for Jessica. It's interesting because we actually kind of get inside Jessica's head, because normally the books are more told from Elizabeth's point of view, I think, because it's normally like, oh no, what's Jess up to now? How am I going to solve that problem that she's created for me? So to get Jessica's inner perspective is quite interesting, and she's a more likeable person, and she's, you know, quite vulnerable because no one else is really helping her in this. She and Todd and Mr. Collins are sort of like the only real allies who can see that something is wrong with Elizabeth. So everyone else in town just doesn't really care enough, or is just like, oh, she's changed, oh well. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you for liking the video, thank you for subscribing to the channel, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, bye.